Welcome to the Startup Grind.
Thank you, everyone. Great to be here. I started this company talking about what I'm doing AI, but prior to this, I've had two exits. One was more of a consulting firm where we're doing some very interesting projects across the valley. So I'm from Bay Area originally. We just moved here down to the beautiful Sacramento area about a year back. And since then, I've been very active. Thanks to Rich. Actually, Rich was the first one that I an AI community focused event that I attended. And since then, he's introduced me to a lot of special interest groups here in the Sacramento area. These things are getting in the way, I just don't know how to minimize. Yeah. Even it's there, interfering with mine. But yeah, so I've been in the valley. Mountain View, San Jose. I'm from Danville originally. We lived there for 20 years prior to that in the more further south, down south. Not in the specific or same order, but I've been at Google both from inside and from outside. So I've been associated with Google for a very, very long time. I've had a very good stint with AWS before I decided Google probably is the right way to go. But then the GCP had its own little turbulences along the way to gain market share and such. So we kind of had some rough time to kind of bring in some processes just on the Google side because they're more of a product company. And without getting too much into the Google's DNA about how they actually conduct business, there's a little bit of maturity that Google has to do in terms of at that time, in terms of professional services, how projects and products were actually taken to the market and such. I was a part of that whole thing. Actually, I had an opportunity to sit with the executive vice president and have a chat about how we had a partner. We were one of the preferred partners. So all that stuff aside, I started my career in the Valley at Redwood City in Oracle. So I'm a hardcore RDBMS guy. Went into the enterprise applications, e-business suite, where you have financials, receivables, payables, general ledger. I'm a manufacturing certified American Production Inventory Control Society. That's a mouthful, EPICS as it's called, right? So I'm a manufacturing guy. So I basically have I like to say that I have a good understanding of how each and every moving part in a larger organization, Fortune 100, Fortune 500, actually operates, right? And then how do systems actually play a role into it? So that's the enterprise world, which was like the biggest technology breakthrough in the Valley, and Oracle, right? All the people associated with Oracle became millionaires, and the story goes on. Before it kind of became blasé, and then came Google, cloud with AWS in 2005. And from 2005 onward, somewhere around 2012, the cloud actually picked up with Amazon actually becoming a big player. The first product that they introduced was SMS, the SMS, right? Which is, I forget what the service is called. But anyway, so, huh? Yeah, so short as a service. That was the first product that they actually did. That's amazing. And after that, they had built all these different services around it. Right now, we have we kind of use it on the business side. So my position really is, I started off as a techie. I was the most sought after technologist or the developer, designer, architect during my earlier days, during the RDBMS days. Then slowly I migrated into the cloud area, which is when I came a little more into the management. And then I started identifying opportunities on the business side, because once you start doing the same product over and over again, you start identifying patterns in what the business wants. What is it that the large enterprises want, Fortune 100 to Fortune 500? How loaded it is to really get through a simple problem, right? And then actually automate it, because all these technologies are mostly about automation, if you think about it, right? So as part of Deloitte, and then I ran my own company also, we face the same problems about the technology part is so simple, but the adoption, driving the organizational change, the change management, and the folks who are actually there's a lot of horse trading that goes on within the company. It's amazing if you know about it, right? Yeah, I'm sure most of us have worked with large companies. So technology is not that big of a factor. I mean, it can actually penetrate and really convince, but what happens after it and how the adoption. So I've been exposed to that part of it. So over the last 5 years, I've been very active in the AI ML space. I am technologist enough that I can really architect the complete solution end to end, take care of all the moving parts, like, what's uh, edge computing, caching, load balancing, like, how do you do database sharding and all that stuff. To a very good extent, actually I'm certified, multi-certified in AWS and Google Cloud as well. But right now it's all in cold storage because my focus is mostly on running the business, right? So I was the first to bring in the ML-based forecasting model during the 2020 COVID times. During that 1 year, when the state of California OES, Office of Emergency Services, I got that right, OES, they were till then using good old spreadsheets to do a linear forecasting, which is kind of not disruptive, but it was like not stupid in a way, right? So, I mean, that would not scale. But so they really understood the need of having a pattern analysis with 15 to 20 different parameters to forecast the need of the different kits, like body bags, hand gloves, PPEs, right? Personal protection equipment. So for each of the SKUs, we had to really have a model, whether it's a time series model, and the same model won't work for all the 50 counties that we have in the state. Some of the population-rich states like San Francisco, Los Angeles, and all, we had no problem. Plenty of data, more than you want. But up in the mountains, they're just 100 beds. 100 population or 100 beds, I can't remember which. I mean, that was not the place for ML really to do its magic, right? So I was the initial one to put together a team. We partnered with Google, went to the state, and we actually beat Deloitte, which is when Deloitte made an offer and I changed it to Deloitte. So that was my background. So what am I doing at Aurus is it's a startup. Well, it's been actually, I wouldn't say it is like 3 months old, but it's kind of in that vicinity because we actually started uh, accelerating. We are on fire for the last 4 months because we've developed actually 4 different products. And I'll talk to you briefly about that. But my message, I mean, yeah, we'll definitely talk about the product, the TAM, the SAM, the SOM, and all those good statistics, the market hype, and then how I actually went into really identifying that this is the idea that we must go after, right? Um, Before I got to this part, I did have my ups and downs, a lot of rejections, and that actually builds character. Like, I had in fact, some engineers kind of bail because we were a startup. I couldn't pay the salaries, right? So, I mean, even today also, like, we're not in a position where we can pay the market rate. But with my contacts and the kind of reception that we're getting, there's an equity kind of an offer. And we actually work mostly for passion than perks at this time, but that also has its life cycle. Pretty soon we'll have to start getting into the big league, right? Uh, so yeah, so what is wrong slide? Uh, okay, yeah, no, right slide. So why, let me start off with talking, that thing is blocking. I don't know if yeah, to my speed. Yeah. Okay. So I am after a $160 billion opportunity. You have competition, plenty, right? I have seen a lot of enterprise applications go up and down. And like, Oracle had a lot of competition when it came in. Starbucks had a lot of competition, but Burger King was selling coffee at $1, but Starbucks chose to sell the same, a different coffee at $5. Right? So what I feel is I'm the Starbucks of this industry. Is what I know, the pain points that I've studied up close and personal with some of these large enterprises and the small enterprise alike. I've done a market analysis in terms of who I'm competing with. I can comfortably say that I am like in a good spot in terms of competition. My competition would be DocuSign, UiPath, and a few other larger companies. I'm not counting the smaller ones, but I should, but the slide will fill up. I can talk to you about those. They're like, operating anywhere between the $5 to $10 million range. What I'm after. So if you look at this slide, let me the there's a lot of friction. Like, despite all these enterprise applications coming to play, they've done their magic. Without enterprise applications, we wouldn't be here. People may call it legacy, like some of the newer generation may call it. Well, you still like, I mean, that's the way we should work system. And we have like, Workday coming in, doing everything. But the thing is, with these companies who are supporting about 17 trillion dollars worth of business all across the globe. That's a mind-boggling number. It's like, larger than the US GDP and a few other countries put together, the top 5 countries put together. So the ERPs are sustaining or holding the business, all these companies together. I don't know, somebody actually was sitting and counting, but they actually arrived at $17 trillion, right? Quite a big number. So I'll take it for that. I actually wrote an article. If you connect me with LinkedIn, there's a lot of articles that I've written in because I'm trying to bridge the gap between enterprise applications, which is you're sitting on a mountain of data, and then bring in AI on top of it because AI is the cherry on the cake, but the cake has to be there too, right? So when you talk about data, which is the oil for ML and all the good stuff, where are you getting the data? Either you can go to Kaggle and then you can go to a few other public data sets and all and bring data from there. But if you actually want structured data, there's no better place than to go after ERP. So what I am doing, knowing ERP inside out, bottom up, like, everything, every moving part, well, to the most part, I want to be leveraging on top of that. And that's what Aurus is focusing at, right? So addressable market is $160 billion. That's across the globe. Am I going after it? No. I mean, it's humanly impossible. Serviceable addressable market. What that is about, like, if I'm not mistaken, between 20 to 25 billion dollars. Now these numbers are so skewed because when I was doing my research, it was only for one specific use case. All right. It's only the financial services, for example, which is where I started doing my research. And that sat at $20,000. But then the platform that I'm addressing, which I'll talk to you in a little bit, is I would cautiously say and not announce it big time that, but I Aurus is kind of an horizontal, but we where you can build up a whole bunch of solution bundles. It's like a bunch of Lego blocks, right? We got microservices based architecture, and then these are all Lego blocks that you can assemble very quickly with low code, not no code, low code, and uh, and basically stand up a solution for your specific vertical, right? Let me pause there and see if there are any questions, and then we'll do this interactive session. Any questions so far? Okay. ERP is enterprise resource planning, right? So that is the backbone for any system, for any company, large company, GE or Boeing or Home Depot and all these different verticals, right? All these companies have, I mean, they cannot operate without ERP. So those are the underlying systems where you invoice, issue invoices, you get receipts against that. There's two-way, three-way, four-way matching. Yeah. I'm talking right now. I haven't come to the document part, right? So there are a lot of transactions that are sitting. These are all highly structured data. They're all like, tables and columns. Yeah. How do you mean? SOPs. Standard operating procedure is like, that's basically you're talking about a framework, right? Standard operating procedure would apply to any system, whether you're doing a cloud implementation or you're doing an ERP implementation. It's more of a framework and a methodology. It's like you're doing a waterfall or so that's a different area. But standard operating procedure could be for if there is fire, right? So what is the standard operating procedure for the fire department to go? Like, there are some protocols that they have to follow. So that's SOP. Yeah. Yeah. So so you're right. For every technology project or systems implementation, there's always an SOP, standard operating procedure, and that can translate into what the software is and how big the company is, what's the scope of your work, what's the statement of work that you need to achieve, right? So there are some best practices which translate into SOPs. So the one quadrant. So this is the market research, a PDF, but we will not go into that. That is basically the standing behind each of these Instagram bar. And what I'm addressing is the small little tiny one. That itself comes to 8 to 10 billion dollars. Even if you were to address about 1% of it, you're golden, right? Uh, Okay. So I think at this point, I'll just jump the slide and then take the thunder away from the future slide. But I'll tell you what Aurus does is an AI platform. Like I said, we are breaking down all the AI offerings and AI services, keeping the complexity away under the hood, right? The complexity is all mapped away. And at a point, we will be having developers who will, or designers, or like, people who are actually product builders, use our microservices architecture and stand-up solution bundles. Now, what is a solution bundle? It could be a loan processing system, right? So I will talk about that pain point in a little bit. And towards the end, I'll also show a short demo, a video clip, because we don't have time for a demo. It's a video clip of the product that we actually built, one of the products that we actually built. But you can actually cookie cut that and do the same thing from loan mortgage to healthcare to supply chain or to logistics, where there's business done, right? So where there's an exchange of document, you can actually like stand up those kind of solutions. Uh, yeah, so we have use cases in almost, so these are the use cases that we're right now focusing on. I should take away legal. We're not doing anything in legal for the record because there's some conflict of interest from the place that I'm at or I'm coming from. So we don't want to touch legal at this point, right? Uh, Finance, we can do loan origination services and we can do know your customer compliance. And these are the areas which are high friction. If you actually have closed a loan in the last 5, 10 years, you think it's automated, but you're actually exchanging your pay stubs, bank statements, and everything on email. Why is that, right? And I have a personal story, which is where I start my pitch when I'm actually presenting to investors. That I say, in 2021, I got 3.5% interest rate, which is unheard of in these days. But it took me a lot of pain and trouble. I would I escalated that 4 times. And if you look at the Google thread, it was like 50 emails just to close one loan, right? It shouldn't be that way. You should just have a unified portal. But fortunately, the technology wasn't so mature at that time, or maybe it was not general availability. But everyone uses Grok these days, Llama and everything. But then how does it really matter to a person who's actually putting the loan together? All that Llama may come up with 170 billion or trillion parameters. That doesn't make sense. You need to make that all those things real for the market, right? You need to have those packaged in such a way that there are two layers. One is for the low-level developer, he can actually just know which microservices to kind of assemble and build a solution. That's on the that's still on the technical side. And for the user, the less they hear about Meta, the less they hear about Mistral, Grok, or OpenAI, or all these fancy companies. I mean, all these highly powerful companies. Rather, I shouldn't say fancy because that may have a wrong connotation. But we take those and we develop our products based on those. But the complexity is mapped away. Okay. Time to move on to, so there are a lot of bill of lading, customs, shipping documents, healthcare, claims. Actually, I spoke with somebody this morning. We're hiring for a board of advisor on my company. And we had a very good conversation about the possibilities that where we can really reduce errors by a magnitude, right? It's like, it's by an order of magnitude. I'm talking 10x, 20x. Is that good enough? Depends upon the case, right? So we do that due diligence. We get into a company. We, again, don't talk AI and all the tough language transformers or everything else that goes around it. But we talk about business process and identify the areas where you want to really drive it, not just from a technology infusion into your company, because everybody has to be on the AI bandwagon. If not, you kind of you snooze, you lose kind of a deal. But you also have to really think about how you want to bring that technology into your company. That's org adoption stuff. So, okay, I've already spoke through it, but Aurus.AI, we are bringing right now the focus is towards small to medium-sized businesses. Because the big companies, Home Depot and GE and all those companies, either they're developing it themselves if it's a technology company, but if it's a Ford, they also have AI internally. And if they fail, they have the deep pockets and they have the risk appetite for that, right? But small businesses are so afraid of AI. They're not able to get onto the bandwagon. Why? Because they just think that it's not going to touch me. Okay, I'm fine. I'm $100 million or 500 million or even a $700 million company, right? Technically, this definition of SMB is anywhere between zero. I don't know about the lower part, but if your annual revenue is below $1 billion, you're an SMB, right? And you can basically think about, depending upon which industry it is in, the number of employees supporting that revenue can vary from 150 all the way to 900, even 2,000, 3,000 employees, right? So it's again, the industry specific, like some of the data. But what Aurus is doing is democratizing and making AI within the reach of SMB. And how we do it is we basically make it into a utility based. It's like a logging in and signing up for a JPMC for a Chase bank, and boom, you're inside, right? Everybody's there on the Chase, the same platform, same consistent look and feel, but then it's keeping your data secure. It's all partitioned, and it's not like a custom built software just for you. Otherwise, if there are like a million customers, you can have a million versions of the same software running. So we are a SaaS platform, and we're going to be basically bringing in a whole bunch of these AI capabilities. Right now, we're going with three. One is called the Do Crunch. No guesses there. It's for document crunching because we ran out of names, and I just had to basically tell my developer, hey, Uday, what do we call this API? That was the first one that we are actually developing. Call it Do Crunch. Okay, so the name had some legs in its meaning. It has a cycle of its own. The next one is called Cortus. Cortus is a large language model backed chatbot, which uses a whole bunch of RAG and RBAC. Wait, RAG is retrieval augmented generation, where you basically split up the document and then, or whatever content that you have, and you embed those into some specialty databases. It's not the RDBMS or unstructured. It's called a vector DB for those of you who probably are more on the business oriented, not so much on technology. Uh, so we also use a lot of authentication, meaning RBAC stands for role-based access control, right? RBAC is front and center for us because we want to deliver a very trustworthy and the same consistent user experience when people actually sign up for that product and want to bring it into their website. Internal, external, we don't care, right? So that's where the chatbot comes in. And what it's going to do is we have a whole bunch of foundational models, which basically brings us up to foundational models is like OpenAI, what that provides you is a foundational model, and all these perplexity, sorry, all these large companies that we hear of, they provide something called a foundational model. It brings you on par with that industry. So for example, if you were to use arm as a word, right? Arm. In medical parlance, it's a body part, right? Whereas if you say arm in finance, it's the period of the mortgage. It's like, you got a 5-year arm at 3% or 5%, right? So that kind of taxonomy and semantics is maintained by these foundational models. And there are special purpose models for each of these industries. And if you're actually building a manufacturing system, you're better off using that foundational model, which is purpose built for that. And then something else happens on top of it, and which is if it is Ford or Toyota, they are different companies. They all have their own specific IPs, right? They have their own specific what do you call manuals, standard operating procedures or whatnot, right? So you basically overlay on top of the same foundational model, and it starts becoming your dictionary or go-to thing for within your company for that specific context, right? Just a quick primer on how these chatbots work. So we are actually piggybacking on some of these uh, best of breed foundation model. Actually, OpenAI is one. I mean, the reason it's very popular, I think DeepSeek also is, but I won't go to DeepSeek right now for whatever reason. But OpenAI is where we're placing our bet because Microsoft bagged, and it actually has like it collapses all these vertical models into just one single platform. It is actually, if you were to talk about legal or manufacturing or finance, OpenAI has one single large language model, which provides you the foundational stuff, which is the lower layer, right? Again, too much into this slide. I will see if there's anything that I missed. Yeah, so Aurus.AI makes for businesses of all sizes, right? We combine document intelligence, that's product number one, DoCrunch, proprietary AI models, we'll come to that, just a one-liner about that, I'll talk about it, conversational AI is the chatbot. Is the name of the product is Cartus, which is something that we're rolling out. We already are like 50% in development. And make it a utility-based AI platform, servicing businesses to save millions in operational costs through minimal AI investment by enabling them to to interact directly. I'll find a way to put a full stop somewhere in this long sentence, but yeah, so that's what we do. Next slide. Yeah. So where's the real pain? As I already this slide, gap is widening, and the SMBs, small to medium-sized businesses, address are actually constitute about 45% of a US GDP, which is a very sizable chunk, right? So a lot of the companies that you see, I mean, so there are a lot of financial metrics coming from the Fed and all based on how the SMBs are doing, right? So when we talk about SMBs, we're not talking about the big boys who are Fortune 100, Fortune 500, right? So that is an underserved market, and it's affectionately also called the mid-market segment. Mid-market because it's like anything about 150 to $200 million above, but within the $900 million range of annual revenue is the mid-market segment, and that is our sweet spot, right? Uh, for the same reasons that I mentioned, an SMB owner is typically worried about where to where to get the cash to pay his next salary for his 900 or 400 or 500 employees. They may be having like a $5 million in revenue in receivables, but the customers are not so great that they actually release it on time. Net 30 is out of the window. Net 45 is, I mean, it's just for the paper. But are you going to go and sue them? No. It's just a kind of a deterrence. But generally, net 45 pays in net 60 and 60 days. But during that time when the money is actually locked up, you actually go to a loan shark or do a whole bunch of these things. So we need to really cut that time and really focus, bring in AI so that they can really take the advantage of either having reclaim their time, having doing much of the repetitive mundane tasks and have AI do it, as against have an army of 10 to 15 people actually do some low level repetitive work, which is highly error prone and stuff like that. And so that's one of the benefits. But then typically the gap actually keeps on increasing. And then by the time they realize that they're too far behind the large companies, and a lot of these AI companies have already, larger companies have already implemented it, it's a game too late. They're late in the game and they get acquired or they have to shut off. And SMBs are also the fastest to close. So if they have an offering like what Aurus is providing, uh, it's just like, go to PG&D and sign up kind of a thing. Like, well, not exactly, that's a bad comparison, but yeah, it's very utility based. So yeah, so the SMB is drowned in document overload without automation. There's a lot of people hazing. I'm talking to a very large broker here in California for employee health benefits onboarding. And I believe to onboard one business onto their platform and then map them back to Anthem, Blue Cross, or whichever company that they end up going with as a carrier. These are the brokers who are actually enrolling these SMBs, and also behind those SMBs, there are like hundreds of employees who need to be brought in. So all in all, there is easily about 500 to 600 pages of forms, or 500 to 600 forms, depending upon the size of the SMB, that are exchanging hands. And people are sitting and then check marking. Okay, he said married, but he didn't mention the spouse. He said children, dependents, but he didn't actually put in any social securities, or social securities are all wrong, or, wacko stuff like that. So we actually, with Aurus, which I will show again towards the end of the presentation, a short video, all you have to do is take all those bunch of forms and throw it onto Aurus. And within 15 minutes, it's going to compare. It's going to give you a whole bunch of validation rules, which is just all that a human has to do at that point is human in the loop, HITL, as it's affectionately called. You just have to basically manage by exception. The 90% of the process is automatically taken care of you. The only thing that you do is, if there are any exceptions, any errors, says that, hey, like the bank statements, the total opening balance, total credits, total deposits don't match up to the closing balance. So somebody's tampered with it, perhaps, right? So And that, and then like, if there are four bank statements, people don't have to sit down and enter it one after the other. That causes a lot of loan abandonment, so to speak, which actually jacks up the price of the loan companies to $11,000 per loan. So the margins are very thin. $11,000. That's a fact from Fannie Mae. And I got that source. I'm glad you asked that. $11,000, just think about it. I can bring that down to $2,000, if not less. That's my value. That's part of the pitch. Yeah. So the average cost across the industry to close a loan, if you apply for a home loan, is $11,000. So don't think if you're actually giving a closing cost of $700 or $800, they are making a lot of money. They have to survive. The margins are very low. It's not fun. But there are a lot of big companies that are already doing what I'm doing, but those are loaded companies, and that story is different. Rocket Mortgage has a new CTO. He's been at it for 2 years, and obviously is running a large company. But we did that in 2 months. But obviously, we just still need to drive adoption, right? But that's a different story. So there are a lot of eye-opening statistics like those. Yeah. Oh, that's a good question. I cannot answer that, but I'm sure they're making money from somewhere else. It's basically so basically these companies are not going bankrupt. So they have different revenue models to cover up for all this. So guess what? If we actually introduce an automation like this for $3,000 or even lower, they're not going to cut down on the top line. Their profits will remain the same. They're improving the bottom line, right? So that gives them a wider margin for fatter bonuses for all those folks who are So yeah, if I just gave you an example of an insurance, a healthcare benefits brokerage, right? And there are a lot of these companies, and if they have like 15 people, two of who are like the most productive employees, guess what? The strongest employee is their weakest link, right? Because what happens if he or she just moves on and are they basically retire or whatever the case may be? What are they going to do? He or she has like 30 years of experience and they can do those forms with their eyes closed. Are you going to replicate that person? What if you want to move from California to Colorado and then move further down, scale? So this is a real problem. They want to scale, cannot without us, right? So we addressing those kind of challenges. We are actually putting nuclear energy into automation, right? This is something that I thought of right now. Maybe I should. So this automation and steroids is something that we know we can do, and that's what we are after. And this is the conversational AI tool where there are a lot of L1, L2. We can easily eliminate L1, L2's level support. I'm talking about customer service. This is actually proven in a lab environment in POC with my company. And we got some secret sauce in terms of architecture and such, which is kind of hoping So we have different product lines, and we're going to slowly add to this product, to these product lines. But essentially, it's going to be a platform with a very easy to use UI, UX, or what are the experience. There won't be any training involved. Just do you need training if you have to register for a bank portal? No, right? So I want to make it as simple as that. And I don't know which slide I'm in, but yeah, so these are the 5 hurdles. I won't spend much time because much of it shooting themselves on the foot by saying that AI is not for us. Well, AI is too complex. Well, we'll get there. Right now, my business is going on. That's fine. I'm making like $40,000 a month. Okay. But once that 40,000 becomes 4,000 very quickly, or they are right? So it's like the story of a frog in warm water that you start increasing the temperature. The frog has nowhere to go. Well, you don't want to be. I've learned, and also some of the problems that I face. This is a summary of my lessons learned. Uh, yeah, I'll let me know if you have any questions. I'll move on. Sorry. Yeah. So the ground truth, basically, in our context, it could have multiple meanings. But what I mean here is there's a lot of transaction happening over the last 15, 20. I'm talking about typical SMB when you actually go to an SMB and you say we want to implement this system. Yeah, we both agree These are like a North Star. These are the metrics that you want to hit. How much are you spending? 80% of this? Now we can compress that to 20%, right? But then to be able to do that, you need some grounded models. I mean, so what is how many service tickets did you have over the last 10 years? They're not able to produce that kind of information. They have all these great systems and all, but it's fragmented and we don't have a ground truth to go to actually measure where they're at. We know they're bad. I mean, not they in the sense, we know they're performing badly. There's a lot of room for improvement, but we're not able to attach a metric to it. They don't have, they don't themselves don't know where to get the data from. They basically throw a bunch of spreadsheets. It's being done in the most non-standard way. So that is where we struggle. So we just often struggle and to the point that we basically have to make some assumptions and say, give it up. Okay, enough time spent on where you're at. Let's look at where you want to go, right? But that means we are actually kicking the can down the road by saying that because we still have to deal with some of the data and preserve that data and structure it, right? So something that goes around implementing a typical AI system or just do a discovery. But yeah, so I think I'll just, yeah, so there's much more to it. So they have systems. Integrations is always a need, not an option, but it must be there because they can't throw away all the other systems while, so yeah. So those are some of my notes that I actually stuck up on the slide just before coming here. So again, this slide is talking about nothing but we're keeping it as modular so that like, when there are deep developers who actually build those Lego blocks itself, but there are developers who come and then they know how to use those Lego blocks, right? So think about it that way. So somebody actually coded those Lego blocks also, so which is what we're doing right now. But when a new set of, let's say, interns from Sacramento State University, right? Hopefully, they come and take benefit of whatever that we're doing, right? And vice versa. They can just put those Lego blocks together, but they need to know what those protocols are, how those APIs are being called, and where it actually plugs in and all that stuff. So we are keeping that as modular as possible so that platform has a capability to build a number of solutions, not just, it's not a one-trick pony, not a bad thing to be a one-trick pony, but we want to build as many solutions as possible, as realistically possible, without also like, spreading ourselves thin. That's the objective. I think we're almost getting there. Uh, and we are pointing- see a short video for that. So proprietary AI, because I come from a data science and I did the first one for the state of California. And I see a lot of value, whether it's predictive maintenance in restaurants or manufacturing environment, or if it's a risk scoring model or a probability that you have to determine for a loan actually closing. Why is it $11,000? Because there's a lot of loan abandonment. People basically start pushing fraud documents. I mean, I'm just giving some corner cases, which so it's both. Actually, it's a combination of both. So it's not just one reason, but I'm just giving you one example, right? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, they actually give up. Not just so friction is absolutely one reason, but the other reason is also like I've experienced that firsthand, and the context is different, so I won't go into that. But a lot of people are generating manufacturing pay stubs these days, right? They are, yeah. And once you start asking them the level 2 question, level 3 question, okay, give us the phone number of your employer and such. That's when they back off and they are like, they are ghosts, right? So this is reality. I mean, and if you actually go to a property manager here to put a house on rent, that is the, that is, I mean, you go to any property manager, that's a reality. It's a big headache, especially in the Sacramento County. I come from Danville, but I kind of, that it's there too, but then it's kind of, yeah. But anyway, so why am I saying that? Because there's a lot of fraud that's happening these days, and our tool identifies if there's been any document that's been tampered with. not just purely looking at the math, open or close. If there's some patterns that you can recognize. If you actually zoom in and look at the same pixels, those are massively organized very, very differently. You can actually tell if the person is like that guy in the movie Catch Me If You Can. I forgot his name. Finally who ended up employed by FBI, right? Forget his name. Yeah, Abagnale. Yeah, if you're actually doing it at that level, I mean, there are no computers at that, so I think he got it off easy. But you can actually identify those patterns also. This technology to do that. Think about it, right? So we are actually taking all those. Your job can become very easy, right? Yeah. So yeah, go ahead. No. But that's not. That's like a numerical algorithm, right? Sorry. That's like a number algorithm you're running on it. I mean, whatever it's a pattern, that's a number generated pattern. But if it is pixel, so do they? I mean, I'll touch base with you offline, but I'll want to know what's that called? What law? Benford's law. All right. But is there vision analytics involved where you actually zoom in and identify the pixels if they're out of pattern and anything like that? Oh, yeah. So we might, so again, we're not reinventing the wheel. We're basically going to pick up some of these technologies and make it part of a technology stack, right? I don't have to write Perplexity or OpenAI, nor can I do it even if I wanted to. That's like a lot of, but what I can do is use some of those, the fastest riding horse under in the ride on. So if it's OpenAI, so be it. If it's Llama comes up with something better or Gemini comes up with something faster, I will just architect my solution in a way where I can maybe plug and play to a certain extent, but doing that too many repetitive times. So I need to bet on the fastest horse. Yes, sir. So great question. What's your name, sir? Kevin. So Kevin, great question. All right. So much of the science goes into pricing your product. It's not easy. It's not straightforward, right? You got to think of the complex stack of technologies that you're basically bringing in. And that technology, the stack of technology, or the BOM, bill of materials, like we call it, right? The BOM for the technology is also not same for the same feature, but a different flavor, different situation, right? In some cases, I could just be doing an algorithm and then coming up. Well, that's a little bit of a compute memory. But if I have to use vision analytics, then that's a different game. But then will I, for the same fraud analytics, am I going to charge this person $2 and then this person just 2 cents? Probably not. I mean, this has to be unified. So that's why we have like an early adopter program where we are actually watching all these things closely, and then we basically keep ourselves in a. So there are different approaches to it. So if it's for much of the funded companies, right? The VCs behind you, they will provide you some sucker to really sucker, not as an SUCKER, SUCCOUR, I guess that's what I meant. Huh? So they will provide you some cushion to really make a study over all these and average it out. And during that time, they have deep pockets, VCs, right? So they will basically say, don't even charge. In fact, in my previous startup, they're like, I was like, I was working overnight with my developers, putting in all those the bronze, gold, and platinum, and then putting some prices. What are you doing? Take it off, right? Because they don't want to charge. so they will basically give us a runway so that we can actually study the patterns and how much it costs, how many people are actually submitting. So you actually, I mean, right now, once the data is there, once people start, once your machine start ingesting and starts eating up papers, right? Like PDFs and all, there's a lot of data that you can bring out of it. Tremendous amount of data. I'm not just talking about the data that's contained in the document. I'm also talking about everything else, the metadata that's surrounding it, which actually leads you to your decision of how to price something, right? So that'll be a very interesting use case. I mean, we will basically extrapolate that, look at how many cases they were like, fraud, vision fraud kind of a use case, because the models will tell you what actually were the anomalies, what is the output, how many out of like a 10,000 documents that were submitted, what is the percentage that was actually vision analytics, meaning tampering, right? You can open it up in a BMP paintbrush and try to make it look at like the same font to the naked eye. It's the same, but you know where I'm going with this, right? So yeah, it's basically a pattern that you can do. You have, yeah. 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 It might. Yeah. I was going to answer Kevin with another flavor to the same question, right? A different kind of a response. If you think like, 14 cents for a call for a vision analytics is expensive, then what is the downside? What's the penalty cost? Actually, this particular mortgage in the financial services industry is so highly regulated that there's $14 billion. I got all these numbers like memorized pretty much, but could be dated because I've been doing a lot of these presentations. But this is the opportunity. Actually, I'm going 4 levels deep, right? Otherwise, my pitch is just about two minutes. It doesn't go beyond that. But yeah, so what's the cost of penalty, right? It's the tangible is $14 billion spread across like all the different. So that's the amount that's collected in terms of, so there are metrics. So that can go wrong. But the damage to your reputation, right? So if you actually, I mean, right now these days it seems to become like commonplace. I keep getting letters that your email is in the black web and you like you get 1 year free experience because we lost your stuff. That's ridiculous. But yeah, but that's a fact. If you actually end up and getting like loan abandonment not at the application stage, but once the guy is in and he stops paying loan, bankruptcy and stuff like that, then people get penalized, right? For actually not doing a due diligence, or maybe even identifying a fraud document like that may be hard to catch, right? So I mean, but technology is there. You can really identify the bad actors way up in the game, right? The further you allow to go it downstream, the more the damage is. So you want to catch it up front and not let it go past. Yeah, Jerry. Penalized. You can. Yeah. There are a lot of frameworks. Yeah, so that's number one. concern of the industry. And that's why I say, like, in one of, actually, I gave a podcast day before yesterday. Uh, but Yeah, so we're not running after the shiny object. Like, there are so many technologies and new innovations coming out. Technologically, it may be feasible, but then commercially and market-wise, it may not be real. To answer your specific question, there are a lot of frameworks by Google, by all these leaders, right, in the valley, who are ensuring that these are, like, some of these violations do not occur, right? Are they 100%? I forget, there was a specific term for that framework. I mean, weights and biases, and no, it's not that, but there's something else. I can get back to you offline. Yeah, correct. Yeah. So the model is completely internal. So, okay. So I think if you recall what I said just now, there's a foundational layer, the foundational model, right? Which is what OpenAI, when you do Chat GPT, you ask it, write me this agreement, and it actually writes it, right? So that's a legal AI at work, right? But so there's a large language model, foundational model, which is kind of keeping the semantics, understanding what is the terminology and taxonomy for an arm in a healthcare context, in a financial context, right? You got that. So when you talk about the LLM part of it, that is where the compromise may actually happen, not in the custom corporate knowledge repository, which you're training for your specific knowledge repository for your company, because you may have different standard operating procedures, you may have a different manual. If you're a data storage company, then you may have a specific methodical process to install a mount an NFS hard disk, or whatever the case may be, right? So for that, a college kid probably who's a level one support for customer support at a customer center, a call center, right? He may not be well equipped. And so what he does is he hands it over. But then the data, but with an LLM and our chatbot, the objective is really for the level one, kill the issues right there without actually having it to go to L2 and L3, because that's precious time, right? That's number one, cycle time and all that. That's a different metrics. But essentially, what we are arming this level one, like, completely inexperienced or semi-experienced person, is we are training them on their specific data. That is not where so much of a fraud happens, because that is contained within your own four walls, so to speak. But when you're talking about the large language models, which is what the entire world is piggybacking on, where is that getting all its information from? That is where a lot of these compromise may happen. IPs may be getting shared, or inadvertently maybe getting, like, passed on from one company to the other. And that's where the conflict happens. That's where a lot of lawsuits and everything is happening. The large language models, foundational model, not in the model on top. So, yeah, so there are frameworks that Google and all these companies are coming. There was a masterclass I gave about 3 years back on this. It's there on the web. I'll start putting that on our company website, because our company is rather new. So I'm going to have some of those videos kind of unearth and talk about some of these concerns. But there is a lot of advancement in that specific area as well. But yeah, what we're doing is, again, very proprietary. If there is any compromise happening on the IP sharing or IP stealing and all that, that's probably not so much on us than OpenAI. We'll basically say we just took whatever that OpenAI gave us, go sue them, not us. But again, it's not as simple as that, but we got to be careful as well. That's why, like, that's a further down the maturity lane, or the further down the roadmap for us. And yeah, so this is basically also a little bit of a roadmap. I mean, we don't know when we may actually go to blockchain. I was one of the first guys. I done a lot of first things. I'll probably talk about that offline. I did an interoperable between Hyperledger and Ether in a company at UK. They actually invited me to speak at their event, but COVID came and no more UK for me. But this is probably going to happen sometime further down the road. So anyway, that's one. And I hope. No, no, no. We will I mean, it depends upon the use case. If it is Hyperledger is very contained, you got better controls on it, but that's truly not a blockchain. We would actually go to Ether. And there are a lot of advancements in Ether also. I was actually talking, I forget the name of the company, but there is Vitalik, Vitalik or some, the guy who actually invented Vitalik, right? So he is really up in arms against this company that I'm talking about. I can send that out to Rich, and he can basically share that. They found a way to reduce the gas usage for Ether, and that's a beautiful technology. But again, there are some friction for using the blockchain part of it, because in my opinion, it didn't catch on because it's expensive. It introduces latency in your transactions, and these are not business friendly, right? So businesses are like, do we really have to go? Why do I have to fix something that's not broken? I mean, business as usual. I don't want all those four attributes that blockchain throws at me at this point, but make it more bearable for me. I don't want to slow down my transactions, and we'll talk about it. And that time will come with quantum, right? Once quantum becomes really general availability and becomes like, really a commoditized piece of compute, blockchain is all up. So Donald Trump is not thinking out of whack when he's actually investing in crypto, and is so big in crypto as well, right? So he knows something that probably that's a thing to keep in mind. Anyway, the reason I talked about Trump is because he's big on crypto. And that's the only reason I mentioned, but not to get political or anything. Agent AI. So these are things that I really want to bring into my technology stack. Agentic AI workflows, low code interfaces, microservices as AI utilities. So yeah, we talked about all these things. Any area that you want to talk about, let's do it. And this is the way to contact me. This is a small survey, not a survey on my presentation, but that you can tell Rich. But this is a survey on what your pain points are. If you're an SMB, what are your pain points, right? So you QR code this and fill that out. But let's see. He's not a silent speaker. I don't know. Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Is it even going on? Oh. Very much it. Thank you. So, is there anything that you any way that we can help you? Yeah. So I'm looking for any companies, like, let me redefine the SMB. Any company that is dealing with a whole bunch of documents that need to be aggregated, need to be manually worked upon. Go to document 1 and then go back to document number 25, make sure that you tally that. Uh, it's a tough task, right? I mean, you can, those yellow bars that came up pretty fast the moment you upload. So what I'm saying, the profile is the ICP, ideal customer profile, is somebody who's like a broker or any loan company or anybody that's like relatively smaller, not the loan depot and the big ones. I would want to talk to them, right? Any company that's dealing with a lot of like standard stationery, your W-2s, driver's license, any of the government forms, that 1003 that you saw just now is a universal rate. I'll come to you just a minute, please. So 1003 forms or any government applications for a whole bunch of grants and all that you do. If there's a lot of paperwork that you're dealing with and you see stacks of paper, that's for us. Actually, I will, since I'm sharing. Yeah. So if you can make, if you know anybody in your circle who can benefit from these, like, and who's a business owner or in a position of influence who can actually bring in a new software into the company and do the job of 10 with just one, do more with less, right? That would be a perfect uh, mouse here. Yeah. So we're looking for companies like those. Yes. Give me 1 second. Yeah. Any questions? Sorry. Yeah. Baran. Yeah. Construction is, again, highly underserved market right now. And we want to talk to them if they're, because they deal with a lot of permits and such. But then the question also is, if they are able to do it with uh, just 4 employees, then perhaps they don't need us, right? Yeah, yeah. So it's not a big deal. I think somebody got really creative. Okay, I will use that item. Yes, yes, with like stacks of document. These are uh, just to do one regular task like onboarding an SMB onto their platform and benefits enrollment. The director of operations, along with the army of staff, is sitting till like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, almost for one full week. Why? Because this is like year end or whatever the case may be in those events. That is something that we want to really address. Any other questions? Thank you.